Back in the summer of 2008, my buddy Jackson and I were 10 years old. While our parents worried about a looming recession, we were keeping busy with the hype of the new Batman movie. We were a couple of weeks away from another school year, and we were making the best of it. We spent most of our days outdoors. It felt better than sitting inside and enduring the endless drone of political debates, or hearing our parents moan about making ends meet. Jackson and I both had a Nintendo DS, and we played them religiously. You could find us tucked away in every corner of downtown Hilltop, trading Pokemon and turning in nickel cans for cheap gas station snacks. I think I learned the importance of washing my hands solely from trying to play games with sticky, slushy fingers. It was a good time. Sometimes we'd head down the river to scare the Girl Scouts before they got to their campground. We'd hide in the bushes and pretend to be wild animals. We were coming back from a visit to the campground. There were no scouts there, so we just wandered around and checked out the equipment they left behind. We'd already checked the tool shed, but there wasn't anything fun to mess with. Instead, we marveled over a hairpin that we found. This small pink plastic thing with a blue sunflower on it. "I bet this is Melody's," Jackson mumbled. "I think there's a blonde hair on it." "Nah, her hair's too short. It's probably Lynn's." "No, Lynn's is curled. This one's straight." "Wanna bet?" He thought about it and offered me a hand. "If it's Melody's, you can't use your Luxray anymore. If it's Lynn's, I can't use my Garchomp." Deal. We shook on it. We'd probably forget all about it in a couple of days, but it gave us something to do. And besides, that Garchomp had been kicking my ass all summer long. We followed the river, making our way back to town. We were about halfway there when we heard something up ahead. There was this bright yipping noise, like puppies. Looking down the river, we could spot what looked like 6 coyotes crossing the stream up ahead. 1 larger, 5 small. The larger one was pacing nervously, stepping back and forth, crying and howling at one of the smaller ones. They had all crossed the river, except for one. One of them sat on a stone, staring straight ahead. It wasn't nervous or crying or anything. It just sat there. Jackson pointed at them and held his finger up, asking me to be quiet. I nodded. We stepped a little closer, and despite our best intentions, we spooked them. The larger coyote sped off with all the little ones bouncing after it into the underbrush. But one of them was left behind, and it didn't seem to care. "You think it's sick?" I whispered. "Maybe it's dead. It's not moving." "No, look, it's blinking." It was blinking. It sat there looking straight ahead. It almost looked sleepy, like it didn't have a care in the world. We waited for a couple of minutes to see if the mother would come back, but she never did. I was curious. We got close enough that we could poke it with a stick if we wanted to, but we didn't. It was a coyote pup, looking right at us, and it wasn't moving. It looked fine though, bright eyes, steady breathing, healthy fur. It locked its yellow eyes on me, like it was trying to make sense of what kind of strange dog I was supposed to be. Then, it stood up. It balanced on its hind legs. "Jesus, that's cute." Jackson beamed. "Why's it standing up?" "Who cares? It's cute." "But they don't do that. They don't stand up." Jackson nodded but couldn't stop smiling. "Maybe she thinks she's people." He took the pink hairpin with the blue sunflower and removed his shoes. Step by step, he made his way into the river. He carefully reached out and attached the hairpin to the coyote's perked ear. "Look," Jackson smiled. "She's the prettiest girl in the world." That made the coyote react. She panted eagerly and dropped down on all fours, spinning in a circle and making little noises at us. We spent all day with that pup. At first, we were looking for her mother, but we realized she wasn't coming back. That, and this little thing was following us around. We got her some snacks, talked to her, tried to make her do tricks, all of it. Neither me nor Jackson had any pets of our own, so this was like finding a free dog. We both knew there'd be no way we could bring it home. Not only was it not a dog, but our parents were in a bad spot. I didn't know it at the time, But my mom had lost her job, and they were contemplating a move. Jackson's parents were trying to figure out how to keep their hardware store open. You couldn't bring a dog into that kind of environment. We settled for the next best thing. We took all the snacks we'd saved up and gave her all of it. We thought about getting her some dog food, but she really seemed to enjoy people food. She followed us around all day, sometimes getting up on her hind legs as if trying to copy us. It was so funny watching her trying to balance and watching that little tail bob as she tripped on her feet. Sometimes as we walked, we could hear a little yip as she stumbled over something. Jackson decided to make it easy for her and carry her around. She seemed to like that. She was small enough to sleep in the pouch of his hoodie. We found a spot for her behind a dumpster outside the abandoned sporting goods store. We stuffed Jackson's hoodie in my backpack, making a little nest. Before we left for the day, I bent down and whispered, "We'll be back first thing in the morning, all right?" The coyote yelped at me and tilted its head. "I know, but we'll be right back." It yelped again. I paused, looking into those yellow eyes. The coyote did nothing. I looked a little closer, speaking in a lower voice. "Do you understand me?" The coyote tilted its head. It didn't respond, but bobbed its head and wagged its tail. Whether it understood me or not, it was clear this thing enjoyed our company. Jackson said his goodbyes and scratched her behind the ear. "Who's the prettiest girl?" he cooed. "You are. Yes, you are." The coyote almost danced around the backpack as it jumped and rolled, making little puppy noises. For the next few days, that coyote pup was our world. We took her everywhere, and we didn't need a leash or anything. She would follow us around, shared our snacks, and cuddled up next to us as we played our games and talked the summer day away. Jackson wanted to call her Megan, as in Megan Fox, but I vetoed it. We ended up calling her Jessica. I had a bit of a crush on Jessica Biel back then, so if our pup was to be named after the prettiest girl I knew, well, that was it. It worked for Jackson, too. He had a thing for Jessica Alba, so Jessica it was. Little Jessie pup. We forgot all about the hairpin and our bet, but Jessie pup still had it bobbing from her ear. She didn't make the slightest attempt to remove it. She really was a little lady. She would bite down her nails until they were neat and tidy, and she would get all bitter and gloomy whenever you ruffled her fur the wrong way. She was a prima donna, and we spoiled her plenty. They say dogs and coyotes are cleverer than we give them credit for, so I didn't know what to think of her. Jessie did a lot of things I didn't expect an animal to be able to do. She picked up tricks almost immediately, like spin or sit. It's like she understood the word rather than the action itself. We even tried to teach her to speak. Jackson was leaning against a chain-linked fence, dangling a piece of beef jerky at her. "Go on," he said. "Speak." Jessie got up on her hind legs and looked up at the jerky. She was salivating and showing all her teeth, something she did whenever she saw a tasty treat. Then she turned her attention straight forward to Jackson. Her tongue retracted into her mouth as her paws lowered. Her legs didn't shake anymore when she stood up. She was getting good at it. Really good. When she finally made a noise, it was less of a bark and more like a hacking cough. At first, I thought she was choking on something, but Jackson was still holding the treat. Instead, she repeated the sound a couple of times until it started to sound less like a cough and more like a groan. "You hear that?" Jackson said. "She's just coughing." No, listen." I leaned down to get on her eye level. Jessie pup turned to me, her body never once wobbling despite balancing on her hind legs. She stared at me with those big yellow eyes. "Go on, Jessie," I said. "Speak." She opened her mouth and turned a little,
as if to align her throat at the right angle. Then she let out a breath in a huff like she was clearing her throat. And I swear to God, it sounded like, "Hello." Jackson was ecstatic about this development. He would try to get her to say all kinds of things, like our names or our town or the name of the streets. Half of the time, she could do it pretty well. You could kind of hear what she was saying if you really listened for it, but to a random bystander, it would have just sounded like phlegm and groaning. But to two 10-year-olds, it was magical. Jessie, the magic pup.
We got her a better place to sleep. We propped up a big old gym bag and remade a hubcap into a water dish. We made sure she was comfortable, and Jackson stole a decorative pillow from the couch in his living room. It was hard and embroidered, but Jessie loved it. She was always at her best whenever we treated her like one in the gang, rather than a pet. But nothing made her happier than having Jackson call her the prettiest girl in the world. That was, by far, her favorite thing. We noticed over the coming days that Jessie was getting a bit too adventurous. She would stray from her nest and almost walk into traffic, so we had to do something to keep her safe. She was growing fast, and with her new gym bag nest, we could move her around whenever there was too much noise or traffic. We ended up going back to the Girl Scout camp, as they had packed up for the summer. There was that tool shed with a broken wood panel that you could crawl under, so we could make it like Jessie's own little house. We would sneak out leftovers from our houses. Jackson did this thing where he would say I loved his mom's cooking so much that he'd like to bring me some. It always worked. I would say the same to my mom. We did this every now and then so we could bring Jessie an extra portion. Jessie did this thing where she would slap her paw straight into the food and scoop it up, like she was trying to use her paws to eat. She seemed frustrated when they didn't bend the way our hands did. She would yip and yelp until Jackson spoon-fed her. She loved that. But I think Jackson was a bit too close to her to realize something wasn't right. He didn't see the way she looked at him when his back was turned. He didn't see the confidence she had when she stood up straight on her hind legs, or when she combed back the fur on her head. It stopped looking like a trick, and it started to look surprisingly natural. Less like a coyote, and more like a little person in a very strange costume. One day when we came to see her, Jessie was sick. Her fur was matted and coming off in fistfuls. She kept sleeping, and her tongue was hanging out of the side of her mouth. Jackson was beside himself, holding her close and stroking her ears. She would wake up in short bursts, poking her cold nose into the cavity behind his ear. He would sit out there with her all day, just to make sure she was getting better. I wasn't so sure she was. I loved that pup, but there was something strange about it from the very beginning. Maybe it had been sick all along. There must have been a reason it was left behind. While I wandered off to get some snacks, I decided to stop by the river where we'd found her. That one spot along the river is a bit eerie. It's the one place where the birds are silent and the dragonflies stay away. You can see ants walking in circles. If you look into the water, you can see river stones aligned in repeated patterns. Something had happened there, but there was nothing that really stood out. There was nothing sick, dead, or rotting. I didn't know what to make of it. Not a clue. Not a single one. But no matter how much snacks we gave that pup, or how much we comforted her, Jessie just didn't get better. She developed this swelling on her stomach, and soon enough, most of her fur along the tail was gone. And one day when we went to see her, she was gone. We couldn't find her. We tried to move on, but Jackson was taking it hard. He really, really wanted a dog. He'd wanted one for years. If it hadn't been for his sister being allergic, he probably would have had one by then. We tried making the best out of summer without her. After about a week, there was this one morning when my mom called me over. She used my full name, so I knew it was something serious. I just got out of the shower when I found her in my room, sitting on the edge of my bed. She had this stern look on her face, like she was already scolding me without saying a word. "Would you mind telling me what you've been doing?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean this mess," she said, tapping the bed. "Don't tell me you don't know." "I'll make my bed, sheesh." No, don't do that. Don't dismiss this." She wagged her finger at me and pointed a flashlight under my bed. My heart skipped a beat. The underside of my bed was covered in empty snack bags, crumbs, and fur. Lots and lots of fur. Handfuls of it. And at the very end of it, I could see my crumbled up backpack, the one we'd used as Jessie's first nest. "Did you bring roadkill into this house?" Mom asked. "What is this? How did you even—" I didn't do that, Mom. That's not mine." "Oh, I'm sorry," my mom shrugged. "I forgot that this isn't your room and that this isn't your space to care for. I'm so sorry. I forgot that you just drop by here sometimes." She rolled her eyes and handed me the flashlight. "I want it cleaned before you leave, and I need an explanation." I did my best to clean it up. Some of the fur got stuck in the carpet, as if something heavy had slept on it. Jessie had been missing for days. Had she been staying there, in my room, all along? How the hell did she get in without anyone noticing? We didn't have a doggy door or anything like that. And more than that, where was she now? I went through my entire room. My mom mistook it for thorough cleaning, but I was looking for clues. There were paw prints in my closet, dirt on the edges of my bedroom door. I could tell something had been in there, but I couldn't tell what it had been doing. It had to have been Jessie. It just had to. But how? By the time I was done cleaning, it was the middle of the afternoon. My mom gave me a break and let me run out to play with Jackson. I ran to his house as fast as I could, bringing the backpack along. Before I even got to his house, I saw him coming down the other street, running to meet me halfway. We hadn't planned this. It just happened. He noticed my backpack, but I stopped him before he could ask. "She's been in my room," I said. "There's fur under the bed." "I know," he nodded. "I saw her last night." He looked a little pale, maybe from the running. He stroked his arm and kept looking around like he was expecting to see something. "She looked real sick," he mumbled. "Really, really sick." "Like what kind of sick?" He shook his head and looked down, lowering his voice. "She didn't have any fur left," he mumbled, "and her face was all weird." "Weird how?" He didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the ground and tucked his arms tighter. "Weird how, Jackson?" I repeated, but I couldn't get a straight answer. We decided we needed help. Hilltop is on the east side of the river, so there's plenty of ranchers around. Since there are ranchers, there are veterinarians. There was this one veterinarian named Mario who worked downtown. He mostly worked cattle and the occasional sheepdog, but he was good people. He had 2 kids of his own, and he always showed up for career day. When we got to Mario's office, he could tell something was off. All year round, he was used to seeing middle-aged ranchers with baseball caps stumble in to complain about a cow, but now there were 2 quiet boys standing outside his reception. No wonder he came to see us right away. Jackson broke down in tears when he tried to explain, so I tried my best to give Mario the full story. I told him about how we'd found a coyote pup and how we'd cared for it when its mother abandoned it. Jackson interrupted me. "It's not just a pup," he cried. "Her name's Jessie."
I corrected myself as Mario sat him down. I explained how Jessie was smart and funny and cute and how we'd given her snacks and somewhere to sleep. But when I started telling him about her getting sick, I could see something changed in his demeanor. Back then, I thought he was just worried about our coyote pup, but looking back at it, he must have thought she was carrying something bad, something like mange or rabies. So she lost all her fur, Mario said. She lost her fur and she's somewhere around your house. That or in her shed, Jackson sniffled. We made her a nest by the campgrounds. And you think she's there now? There or at Jackson's place, I said. He saw her there last night. Mario turned to Jackson, giving him a comforting pat on the shoulder. Are you sure it was her? He asked. There's lots of coyotes around here. I'm sure, Jackson mumbled. I recognized her voice. Mario didn't understand what he was saying, but I could tell he was unnerved. He was about to say something, but couldn't get the words right. Instead, he excused himself and hurried to his phone. I'm going to need a little help, Mario admitted. This is not really my wheelhouse.
While Jackson and I wanted some medicine to help our friend, Mario had something different in mind. To him, it sounded like a sick animal was developing an unhealthy obsession with two local kids. Yes, we had good intentions, but he was scared for our safety. We asked what kind of medicine he could get her, but he didn't answer. Instead, he called in a couple of favors from some of the locals. He called our parents, too. My mom and Jackson's mom got there at the same time. By the time they arrived, I could see 3 trucks pulling up in the parking lot. 2 of the men had hunting rifles. Jackson was beside himself, trying to make them listen. I didn't know what to think. I couldn't get what Jackson had said out of my mind. What had her face looked like? What happened? We were stuck in that office for a couple of hours. Jackson's mom had to run off to help out with their store, but my mom had nowhere to be. We sat around watching an old TV in the reception as Mario went with the hunting crew. We stayed there for well over 2 hours until my mom got a call as well. She had to go see a banker about something, and my dad was waiting for her signature. She had no choice but to drop us off at our house and have us promise not to leave. Straight to your room, lock the door, open for no one, she said. Either of you leave that room, and I'm cramming your video games down the garbage disposal. There was no point in arguing. I kept my mouth shut as Jackson and I were ushered back to my place and herded into my room. My mom closed the door and rushed off with her phone glued to her ear. Alone, we just sat there for a while. This was no one's fault, really. Jackson noticed the pile of fur in the trash can. He didn't seem all that surprised. I don't think they're gonna find her, he whispered while thumbing through a comic book. Why not? 'Cause they're looking for coyotes, he continued. She don't look like no coyote no more. What's she look like then? He shook his head. Like... weird. By evening, a bunch of trucks stopped outside our house. Some people were cheering and yelling. We could see they'd killed a bunch of coyotes and laid them out in the back of a truck. I could see it from the edge of my bedroom window if you just leaned out a bit. Everyone seemed relaxed about it, cheering and smiling at one another. One of the older men were getting all kinds of attention, clearly showing he was the one who'd killed the most. You think they got her? I asked. She's not in there, Jackson said. I can tell. Should we say something? Do you want to say something? I didn't know. I wanted Jessie to be healthy again, but they weren't going to help her. That much was for sure. But if she really was sick, what could we do? Jackson ended up staying the night for a sleepover. We had hot dogs and French fries, and we got to stay up as long as we wanted playing on the computer. It was nice and all, but our hearts weren't in it. We were scared. If we told them about Jessie, they'd go kill her. And if we didn't, she'd still be out there with God knows what. So we kept our mouths shut and played our games, hoping an answer would pop out at us. As the clock crept past midnight, we called it a day. When I came back from brushing my teeth, Jackson was already in his sleeping bag on the floor. I crawled into my bed and put away a couple of comic books. As I said my prayers and closed my eyes, I heard rustling. Looking up, I could see Jackson sitting up, looking out the window. Without a word, I looked the same way and listened. "You hear that?" he whispered. I heard something, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Not a coyote, that was for sure. Not a person either. Not a bird. "What is that?" I asked. "It's talking." I got out of bed and tiptoed to the edge of the window, peering out at a steep angle. There was someone standing in the yard. Someone our size, with long brown hair. "There's someone there," I gasped. "Does it have a weird face?" I looked back at Jackson, then out the window. They were gone. There were scratches on the front door, like a dog trying to get in. I crawled down to Jackson and sat shoulder to shoulder, armed with nothing but a flashlight. We tried to listen, but it was hard to hear anything over our panting. Another scratch at the front door, then something sprinting down the gravel path on the west side of the house. Something creaking as a weight came down on the trellis in the garden. Then nothing for a while. The wind was picking up, so it was getting harder to separate the noises. Was that a tap from a branch or someone coming up the stairs? Jackson didn't take any chances. He pulled up a chair and barred the door, just in case. Then he looked up. "You guys have an attic?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "but we've checked there. No one's up there." "But can you get in that way?" I thought about it and bit my lip. I shook my head. "Not unless you climb up the roof, or leap about 10 feet from the tallest tree in the yard." Jackson's eyes went wide. "What if she can do that?" he asked. "What?" I said, "What if she can do that? Can she get in?" We listened closely and held our breaths. There were too many sounds. Jackson hid under the bed as I moved the chair from the door. It banged against the edge of the desk, sending a bolt straight through me. It felt like I'd been shot by a sound. Suddenly, I heard something from upstairs. Something rhythmic. Footsteps? Maybe that's how she got in. There might be a hatch to the attic in my closet. I wasn't going to investigate. Jackson was safe under the bed, and I had to get my parents. I hurried into the hallway and ran all the way to their bedroom. I knocked and tried to open the door, but they'd locked it. A couple of seconds later, my mom opened, her hair in a tussle. Dad was sleeping soundly. "I think there's someone in the attic," I whispered. "What? Who?" "The coyote." I could see her face relaxed as her eyes rolled in a tired arc. Then something thumped. We both looked up. Was that a hatch being opened? Mom woke Dad up, and he grabbed a baseball bat from their wardrobe. He took point, with Mom right behind him. Dad stepped into my room with the bat ready to swing, but there was no one there. He went in to check the closet. It was open, and the hatch in the ceiling was too. Mom looked out the window. Then I heard a whimper. "Jackson," I whispered. "She's down here." We all turned to the bed, looking down. "She's down here with me." I stepped back and got down on one knee. I saw a long face with a canine grin stretching from ear to ear. Human skin, with rough, brown-looking fur hair. Big, yellow eyes. It had curled up next to Jackson, but now she was looking me straight in the eye. She was showing her teeth and salivating, just like she always did before she bit into a tasty treat. She opened her mouth wide, and an awful sound rolled out of her. Like the grumbling of an empty stomach, she burped out a couple of syllables at me. "Prettiest girl." Maybe she was just happy to see me. I don't know. But something caused her to throw herself out from under that bed. She leapt out with such force that she slammed into me, knocking me out the door. My dad got her by the hair and dragged her back as she snarled and yelped. Mom closed the door, screaming at him to hold her down. It was a full minute of these awful noises and screams. Someone yelled in pain, barks and snarls, glass breaking, and something heavy thudding into a thin body. At one point, I thought the door was about to buckle and break. As the sounds calmed, I put my hand on the door. I heard a cough on the other side. I turned the handle as I heard my mom from the other side. She was calm, uncomfortably so. "Don't come in," she said. "Call the police." "But Mom," "Go downstairs and call the police. Tell them there's been an accident." So I did. The police came, then an ambulance. They had to carry my dad out. Something had bit off 2 of his fingers and clawed one of his eyes. They tried to save it in surgery, but he ended up losing it. Mom got a deep bite across the wrist, but nothing that a couple of stitches couldn't fix. I only saw the aftermath in passing, but my whole room had turned into a bloodbath. Jackson's mom came by later to take care of us. They had to drag him out from under that bed. I never dared ask him what he saw, and he never had the stomach to tell me. He had stayed under there for the whole thing. The only thing he could say for sure was that Jessie got out. She went through the window. I tried to comfort him the best I could. "Maybe it wasn't her," I said. "Maybe it was a robber." He shook his head. She still had the hairpin. Looking back at that night, it's been almost 20 years. Life moves on, but my dad still has the scars. Mom does too, but she hides them well. They never understood what happened. They've been telling themselves that it was a wild animal and that it was just too dark to make sense of it, but it's impossible that they still believe that. They must have seen her. But we're just that kind of family who doesn't talk about that kind of thing. We talk about weddings, anniversaries, and birthday presents. Or if we're feeling chatty, Dad brings up whatever's going on with the Broncos. He's originally from Denver. We ended up moving there once the recession hit. Jackson and I have kept in touch over the years, but our occasional reunions would be delegated to yearly Facebook chats. That's why I'm writing this down. Earlier this year, Jackson reached out to me. He doesn't do that a lot. He didn't really send me a message. It was just a link to a picture. Last 4th of July, there was a bit of an event in downtown Hilltop. There were dozens of pictures of it, ranging from a chili cook-off to a tractor pull. But one of those pictures stood out more than the others. The second-to-last picture shows the local pastor and his wife both holding up a prize ribbon. But if you look closely at the left-hand corner of the frame, you see a woman. A short, gorgeous woman with long brown hair and striking yellow eyes, and a pink hairpin with a blue sunflower.